Welcome back to Nationwide this morning. It's that time of a Tuesday morning for the Quality Talks feature. So, over the years, the Bureau of Standards Jamaica BSJ's role has expanded to include the provision of services in relation to conformity assessment and metrology. Its main activities include facilitating the development of standards and other requirements to which particular commodities, services, practices, and processes must comply, conducting tests and calibrating instruments, certifying products and management systems, providing industrial training, and promoting research and education standardization. The people over there at the BSJ, they do a lot. So in Quality Talks today, we're looking at the future of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica and its development. I'm pleased to be joined by the Executive Director of the BSJ, the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, Dr. Velton Gooden, here in studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Tana, and good morning to your listening audience as well. It's a pleasure to be on your show this morning.
And thank you so much for joining us here on NTM. Dr. Gooden, off the air, was asking about how long you've been at the BSJ, and I want you to tell our listeners as well before going into matters having to do with the future of the BSJ and its development.
Yes, well, my career started out at the BSJ fresh out of university in 1991. I spent the first 3 years as a senior analyst in the chemistry lab, and I left and I went to industry, working with companies like Grace Kennedy, the CB Group. And then in 2021, I came back as the executive director to basically lead this transformative change that is now happening at the Bureau, being a facilitator of business, driving trade, and helping companies to be globally competitive.
And over the weeks, we've had several of your unit leads coming on to talk to us about different areas there at the BSJ and what you guys do. But for you now, as the executive director, we're talking about the future of the Bureau this morning. As we look to that future, what are some of those emerging challenges that the BSJ is anticipating, and how the organization is preparing to address those challenges to ensure continued relevance?
Well, the Bureau is a member of the International Organization for Standardization. It's a world body comprised of over 170 countries and their national standards body, similar to the BSJ. We are discussing at that level. I just came back from the annual general meeting that was held in Colombia. And among the things that we're discussing at that level are things like climate change. You know, as a small island developing nation, Jamaica is disproportionately affected by, the impacts of climate change, rising sea levels, and so forth. So the UN Secretary General said recently that climate change is not just a very important risk for our generation, but in fact maybe the greatest risk of all time that the human nation, humans have had to face. So we're actively looking at standards to mitigate the risk of climate change. At the international level, at COP29, which is a UN affiliate that is looking at climate change and policies and standards to ensure that world temperatures, global temperatures do not rise beyond 1.5 degrees C by the middle of the century. And so through ISO, of which we are a part, we are right at the table at those discussions, helping to formulate policies to limit carbon emissions and to introduce new technology to ensure that we mitigate this risk.
So that's one of them, assessing climate change. But back here locally as well, Dr. Gooden, are there any new industries that the BSJ is focusing on that you think are lacking standards and the BSJ needs to intervene now and create standards for those?
Absolutely. So there are a number of emerging industry. The psilocybin industry, commonly referred to as magic mushroom, is just one such.
Something we've been talking about here on Nationwide, yes?
Yes. So we have been assisting the players, the stakeholders in that industry. So recently, within the last, I would say, 12 to 24 months, we have formed a technical committee that is looking at creating standards for the product and its derivatives, so that we can be assured of safe use of these magic mushrooms. So our work involves creating testing protocols for it to make sure that the active ingredients, which is actually an hallucinogen, is at the right level, and so that people do not overdose and experience the harmful effect of overdosing. So that's just one example of the work that we're doing with emerging industries and helping to make sure that whatever industries are emerging, that they're done in such a way so that the consuming public can be protected.
You were also mentioning the cannabis industry as well, and testing around that. If you could expand on what you were telling me off air about the cannabis industry, since you've mentioned the magic mushrooms to me.
Yes, the cannabis industry, as we know, is another emerging industry for Jamaica with enormous potential. However, again, the active ingredients, the cannabinoids, we have to assure that the products, whether it is being used as in the retail outlets, which are proliferating all over the island,
Yes.
as also as inputs into other pharmaceutical drugs, those are done in a safe way. So we have developed 2 standards around cannabis, which are national standards, and we're actually working actively with ISO to see if we can get those to be international standards. So work is happening. But also we have partnered with one of the sister agencies within the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. The BSJ is an agency within that very important business ministry led by Senator the Honorable Aubin Hill. And so we have developed a number of testing protocols for that to test the level of cannabinoids and other terpenes and other active ingredients. Also to test things like mold, heavy metals, which if are present beyond certain limits can be harmful as well. So there's a lot of work happening in that area as well.
You have a standard for everything. Because we, as I was telling you, we had on your lead in the units of packaging and furniture last week. So there's standards for that. There's standard for everything, Dr. Gooden.
That is it, So we are constantly monitoring industry, both nationally, regionally, and internationally. And what we try to do is to get ahead of the opportunities and make sure that whatever is emerging is done in a way to protect the consuming public and to ensure that there are specifications so that the necessary regulations can be developed and that the monitoring can take place.
So you create all of these standards, Dr. Gooden. How do you get, industry players involved so that they're coming to the BSJ and testing their products and all of that?
So there are 2 strategies that we have been pursuing, especially in our evolved role as a facilitator of industry. And the 2 approaches involve, one, we have developed a key account strategy where we have brought in some business development officers, and they're working with some of the larger players, sort of offering a concert service, an end-to-end service, where we're able to, collect samples, bring them to the BSJ, monitor the work being done, and to ensure that the turnaround time is met. For the smaller players, MSMEs, and we know that MSMEs are by far the drivers of a global economy everywhere, including Jamaica. We have developed what we call a client services program, and I think one of our speakers some time ago spoke about that.
Sure did, yes.
So, many MSMEs, they're not so certain which standards apply to their industry,
right?
What sort of testing they need, what sort of training they need. And so we have developed a program where they can call in, they can get registered. We have even developed an app that they can come on to. They can get registered. They can find out, which standard is relevant for them. How do they move to the next step? And so by that, we are able to help them to move to the next step. We're also able, if we're not able to offer them the services in-house, to direct them to the appropriate agency where they can get the help.
So, Dr. Gooden, you spoke on the new standards that the BSJ is helping to develop in relation to magic mushrooms, as well as the work you've been doing in relation to the cannabis industry. You're speaking on the different things that you have developed to interface with your clientele. and other developments. But as you see it, finally, the future of the BSJ, what's your outlook on the future of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica?
Really, as our minister has often said, Jamaica cannot become a developed country just selling to 30 million people. We have to be able to allow our industries, whether they are producers of products or the delivery of service, so that we can meet the global market. Standards really are the key to global trade. So by developing the appropriate standards which fits with our economy and helping industry stakeholders to meet those standards, we're actually helping them to become globally competitive and thus allow more goods and services to be traded internationally.
Yeah, I totally support that. More and more people that we can have being able to meet these standards and also export now. Because once you're able to meet all the standards, then you put yourself into the category of somebody who's able to export, then the better for Jamaica.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dr. Velton Gooden, he is the Executive Director of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. You are no stranger to this segment, Quality Talks. We've been having on lead representatives from the different units of the BSJ over the past several weeks. And now you're seeing Dr. Gooden, as I said, who is the Executive Director